Hey, Bastish B here for 64K and welcome to another episode of Top 10s.
Welcome to 64K, hosted by Bastish B.
And welcome back. So in this episode will be my top 10 favorite Commodore 64 games for 2021. These are all new release games that came out over the last year. Obviously I can't play every single game ever released, there's just too many even on the C64. Some of them you've probably already played anyway, but maybe there's a few you haven't, and that's always fun to discover. And I also need to mention that this list is made up of games from December 2020 to the beginning of December 2021. Obviously I have to do that because I have to make the video and it has to come out, so there has to be a cutoff. So anything that comes out after December 1st, 2021 will be in next year's video if it's really good. And like all the top 10 videos, just before the number 1 reveal, I'll give a few honorable mentions, games that just missed the top 10 list. So if you don't see your favorites up until then, they may be in there. And with that, let's start this countdown.
Number 10.
Outrage was released at the tail end of 2020 on the C64 by Protovision and Cytronic Software. As you can see here, this game was clearly inspired by Hawkeye. The game originally started its development cycle in 1990, but in 1993, however, 64 magazine held a competition for the best homebrew C64 game, with the winner getting the game actually physically published. Outrage ended up winning, but by this point the distributor had gotten out of C64 publishing. Many years later, in 2005, Protovision stepped up to try and finish the game for publication, but it fell apart. Cytronic then took a shot at it in 2010, but it floundered as well. But finally, with the combined efforts of both companies, the game has finally seen the light of day. As you can see, the game now sports this excellent Steve Day loader screen that captures the action so well. The game comprises of 5 levels with bosses for each. However, seeing it all the way through is gonna be a real challenge because the difficulty is damn hard. Gameplay wise, it's simply a side-scrolling run and gun affair. Blast everything you see, including creatures and traps, and keep on moving till the end where you'll face off against a boss character. There are also tons of shops that pop up during the level, which you can use your cash which you picked up from dead beasties, where you can buy ammo for your guns, health, and smart bombs. Weapons wise, you have 4 guns straight off the bat, each one more powerful than the last. Your main gun has unlimited ammo, but the rest are all limited though, and ammo needs to be bought in shops, but they are really powerful and take out most creatures with one shot. You also have some screen killing smart bombs, although I would suggest using them only on the main bosses because those guys are real bastards to beat. This game may look like Hawkeye, but it plays quite differently in most respects. There's a lot of cheap trial and error deaths, crazy hard bosses, and some jumping platform action that results in, yeah, you guessed it, even more deaths. I'm not a huge fan of the fact that your health is constantly draining no matter what, even if you're not getting hit. It's kind of a cheap way of just making you try to rush a level. Having said all that, overall it is a pretty well put together game. It has nice graphics and it has some pretty good tunes, but it is very tough and unforgiving, just like games were when this was originally designed. So if you're not up for the challenge, you may not fare too well yet, but for everyone else it's a pretty good, although slightly annoying, run and gun challenge.
Number 9.
Battle Kingdom was published by Cytronic Software in 2021 on the Commodore 64, with the game being another Icon 64 production, where the hits just keep on coming, this game being no exception. It's an action arcade adventure game where you are the noble knight, Sir Bob, who has to rescue a bunch of princesses who have been taken prisoner by a group of dodgy dragons. If you've ever played the arcade game Venture, then it's pretty similar to that. In the game you have to run around the kingdom and enter a bunch of buildings and defeat the creatures inside. Your goal is to put together a sword which can be used to defeat the dragon. There are 8 of them in total, which is also the amount of levels in the game. You have a bow and some arrows as your main weapon, with limited arrows to defeat the beasts, so don't go all mental with the fire button. Defeating them, however, either leaves loot, more arrows, or a piece of the sword. Once all the pieces of the sword are put together, the main castle keep is accessible, and you can now use the sword and face off against one of the many dragons. Each building you enter is a bit of a mystery, as you never know what you're going to be facing off against, which is pretty fun. Don't try to rush in and kill them all either, it'll just lead to your death. Play it cool and let them come to you and take them out one by one. Patience will definitely serve you well in many of the buildings. Also, if you do go a little bit trigger happy and waste all your arrows, fear not, cause they'll slowly respawn, so you're never at a total loss to progress in the game. When on the map screen as well, beeline it for the first available building. Don't dilly-dally. Besides dodging the roaming beast, you have to be quick or else the dragon will leave the keep and hunt you down, resulting in a loss of a life. As you can see, the graphics on this game are fantastic. I just love that combination of high-res style mixed in with the more chunky C64 sprite work. I think it just looks exceptional, and is the variety in the buildings and the creatures. Trevor's story provided the graphics and game design, and this is another job well done. Music is another treat, with resident Archon 64 collaborator Soul Cross providing some more great tunes, which in his typical style build themselves up very slowly until the full beat is in place. The loader tune is particularly awesome. Akim Volkers provides his usual coding magic, and this game feels really on point to play. Quick responsive controls, and the game definitely has that just one more go addictive quality that's always a sign of a well-crafted arcade game. It's also balanced really well, with it being challenging but not too annoying. The dragon bosses go from a walk in the park to totally crazy, which is actually quite fun to deal with, and rescuing all 8 princesses is going to take quite a while to complete. The game is both NTSC and PAL compatible, and works on a real C64, C64 Mini and Maxi, and is available in digital and physical forms from Cytronic Software. They have tape and disc versions available right now, but no word on cartridge versions if they're going to release that. I'll leave a link in the description to Cytronic Software to check them out. As per usual, Trevor, Sol and Akim have crafted together another excellent gem of a C64 title to add to Archon 64's impressive backlog of gems. If you like fantasy and arcade style action games, then this game is going to be right up your alley.
Number 8.
Bad Moon Rising was released in early 2021 by Cytronic Software on the Commodore 64. It's a kind of throwback to the multi-gameplay style ROMs like Raid Over Moscow or anything by Cinemaware, except no strategy this time. It's all pure arcade style action. The story is basically ripped from that cheese-tastic movie Iron Sky, with the Nazis making a secret war base on the moon, and you're as part of a European space team trying to blow the thing all to hell to save mankind. The game features some fun, cheesy cutscenes that set up the action, with 7 different levels overall, each one of them switching up the gameplay to make a really varied gaming experience. The 7 levels include a torture screen, which depending on how well you do determines how many lives you get at the beginning of the game, which is pretty unique. A few horizontal styled scrolling ship levels, a Cabal type shooting stage, multiple vertically scrolling shoot 'em up stages, and even a versus styled beat 'em up section. It is extremely varied, with some nice high-res graphics and some decent tunes by modern Sid master Soul Cross. I particularly loved the end credits tune. The game was programmed by Stefan Katteneder, who also did the graphics, and I think he did a pretty good job overall. The biggest issue though with this game is its difficulty. It's all over the place. The second level particularly is way too hard and will probably put most people off, unfortunately. It does have multiple difficulties though, which is pretty helpful. If you can get past that though, it's a pretty good game that works on everything from real C64s to minis and maxis, and is NTSC and PAL compatible, with physical versions also available from Cytronic. It is overall flawed and uneven, but still a quality made title nevertheless. Arcade Daze was released in the first quarter of 2021 through Cytronic Software, with programming duties by the Archon 64 team of Trevor Story, Stuart Collier, and Soul Cross. This game was made in conjunction with the Zap 64 2021 annual, just like the previous 2 years, which saw the team doing Sizzler and Lords of Dragonspire for the previous annuals. Please check out my video on the new Zap 64 annual for more details, which also has a making of Arcade Daze feature to check out as well. The game is essentially an old arcade simulator, giving you the chance to play 18 different clone arcades based on popular games from the glory days of gaming. It is essentially 2 games though, the straight up arcade segment and the fact that you need to collect coins and exchange them for tokens, all the while avoiding the local arcade town bully, Kelly, and and her cat. She drops coins which you can exchange to play games. 10 coins are needed for a token, although most coins count as multiple, so you only need to collect a few to play a game. The overall goal in this mode is to dethrone Kelly by completing every game, and thus becoming the king of your local arcade. If you've ever played the C64 game Lazy Jones, it's also quite similar to that in play and style, and the music definitely has overtones of that game. The arcade games themselves are quick, addictive fun, and you'll know immediately what games they were cloning if you spent any time in an Eddie's arcade or have played any Atari 2600 games. You've got variations on Space Invaders, Tanks, Pac-Man, Centipede, Lunar Lander, Frogger, and variations on those variations, which all gets very Inception-y. Every time you complete a game, it's marked off in the arcade so you know how many more you've got to go to complete the game. There are also 3 modes of play. Kiddie and Master are basically medium and hard modes, with the third, Practice, which is there if you just want to jump in and play the games, free play style, without bothering with collecting tokens or avoiding Kelly and her cat. You do have lives in regular play, and one touch from Kelly and you'll lose one. Her cat can only stun you. Too many hits and it's game over. Overall, it's a fun experience. It's simple and addictive, and will definitely leave a big smile on your face with all those fun arcade nostalgia trips in every little game. The graphics are a nice combination of traditional C64 sprite work and high-res style graphics, similar to most Icon 64 games. And the main tune by Soul Cross, like I said earlier, invokes the best of David Whittaker's Lazy Jones theme and the drone of that Space Invaders sound effect tune. It's great. Check this one out on your C64. It's a real blast from the past.
Number 6.
Monstro Giganto, released through RGCD, is another great C64 release from the Pirates of Zanzibar, the same team that gave us 2020's excellent puzzle game, Boxy Moxy. This release falls in the category of fighting game or one-on-one versus, which is a genre of game on the C64 that no one's attempted to make in a really long time, so it's nice to see a new game on the Commodore that isn't a basic platformer or puzzle ROM for a change. And although this is a fighting game, it's very unique in many ways. First off, the style or setting is just fantastic. I'm a big fan of Japanese kaiju or monster movies, so seeing this for the first time on my C64 just blew my mind. I had the fortune to talk to Antonio Savona, one of the leads in the team that is making this game, about the style and who came up with it.
Lobo came up with the idea of a pet ski-based brawler last summer, inspired by a series of drawings based on Godzilla, King Kong and other giant beasts. It was initially planned as a comic book in which an army of monsters duke it out, but then one thing led to another and the project ended up being a game instead. Oh, and yes, we're all big kaiju fans here.
Seeing these big monsters on screen and battling it out is such a joy. The game offers a 1 or 2 player versus experience. In the 1 player mode, you get to choose your creature from a selection of 4 giant beasts, each with their own unique skills and weaknesses. Just like any fighting game, you should try them all out until you find the one or ones that work for you, as they all play vastly different. I asked Antonio if he could tell us a bit about the team that put this all together and how it came to be.
It's basically the same team that developed Boxy Moxy, and much like Boxy Moxy, Lobo had most of the graphics done by the time he reached out to me for coding the game and to Aldo Chiuma for the music. And we work very well together, therefore it's only natural that we don't change the team.
The gameplay is very precise and it's definitely not a button masher. It's quite tactical, similar to the Way of the Exploding Fist or International Karate, where a well-timed strike is how you play the game. Your monsters also get fatigued if you constantly button mash or attack, which leads them to getting dizzy and leaving them open to attack from your opponent. Learning the strike distance of your monster is key to success. The game is really quite fun in single player, but 2 players where it really shines in my opinion. I asked Antonio if it was always intended as a 2-player game first and a single second, or both.
Yeah, this was initially designed to be a party game, so 2 players only. But then once I saw the graphics, I liked it so much that I thought I wanted to do something more with it. So now you have 1-player mode, the secret origins, the additional monster that you can unlock and everything else. That said, I would agree that 2-player mode is where the game really shines. I've been playing with my friends for quite some time now and it's still a lot of fun.
The basic gameplay is destroy as many monsters as you can until you die. The amount of wins will put you in the Hall of Fame, and if you purchase the physical cart version, your stats will be saved as well as any secrets you open. These secrets involve a new monster and the origin stories of many of the characters. These short little videos are full voice narration explaining the origins of each character and are quite excellent.
The tale of Ai of Poughkeepsie. The medicine men of Poughkeepsie kept fending off evil with a mystical eye beast for centuries, but the last shaman died during the summoning, and Ai was left wandering the plains ever since, growing to a monstrous size.
And are definitely well worth playing to unlock. As I'm sure you've noticed, the entire game is done in Petsky style graphics, which is not a common choice, especially in a fighting game. I asked Antonio why they chose this style over the traditional C64 graphics.
That was Lobo's idea, and I think that it just liked the challenge of making an entire game in Petsky, as if Commodore 64's limitations weren't enough already. From a coding perspective, not being able to use sprites means that you have to adopt a new coding style to move objects on screen, but I wouldn't say it's been more or less difficult than the other games that I've coded, just a bit different.
Sound is another big factor in the game, with all the tunes by Aldo Ciamo, which bop along at a good pace. And I love that each monster gets its own theme tune. It reminds me of when they used to do that in movies before the industry forgot that that was a thing. What's truly impressive though is the crazy amount of digitized speech jammed into this game. It honestly sounds like you're playing a 90s arcade game.
Round 1. Fight!
I asked Antonio if this is the reason the game is only getting a cart and digital release.
It's more the other way around, really. The publisher, RGCD, works exclusively with cartridges. Now, there's so much more that you can do with the extra resources when you roll out a cassette version for it. And once the game was complete, even with all the in-game speech that was already there, which was already a lot, the cart was still only some 20% full, give or take. Now, I didn't want to add more in-game speech because as much as I like talking games, I think that speech should not be invasive or prominent, but rather something to complement the action. So we came up with this idea of the secret origins of the monsters, and all in all I think that's roughly 3 minutes worth of digitized speech, and it could have been easily more than that, but we literally ran out of things to say.
Overall, I had a great time with this game, both in single and two-player versus. Even with the unlockables in single player, it's gonna have a limited shelf life, but as a two-player romp with a friend, I'd highly recommend this. You can get both a digital version and physical cartridge version that comes in this awesome box with one of the best, most detailed manuals I've seen in ages, both from RGCD, and I'll leave a link in the description to pick them up. Overall though, it's a new game in an old genre, on an old system, in a new style. What's not to like?
Game over.
We interrupt our program to bring you this important message.
Gates of the Ancient was released in the second half of 2021 exclusively on the Commodore 64. It was created by Dr. Mortal Wombat, who also did the excellent recently released C64 shoot-'em-up Plekthora. The game itself is a throwback to the classic space exploration genre that I played and loved so much. The basic plot of the game has you as a regular space jockey who happens to find an ancient artifact in space. You then use it, which opens up a wormhole to another galaxy. You're now stuck somewhere in the great deep and have to navigate your way home. When you download the game, it comes with a nifty PDF instruction manual. I'd highly suggest reading it first. You're gonna need to know a few basic keyboard functions, but besides that, it's very easy to get into and play, which is usually the opposite of this genre. Once you start playing, the gameplay involves three major components: battles, exploration, and trading. These three components help you move from galaxy to galaxy, help you upgrade your ship, and help you survive attacks by pirates, aliens, and robots. This game is a lot more focused than, say, Elite, for example. Initially, you're on a path, but after a few jumps, on, things get bigger and more open. It's a good way to ease you into a massive game. Your main functions are waypoints in the bottom right of the screen, and each new galaxy has a new set of them, but you don't know what you will encounter. It could be a minefield, another warp gate, a trading post, and a whole lot of other possibilities. Along the way, you'll no doubt be attacked, and this is where the excellent fast-paced space battles occur, with fully shaded 3D models moving at a cracking pace. Your ship's lasers are initially pretty weak to begin with, but fortunately enemies only need a couple of good hits to be destroyed, which eliminates one of the most tedious aspects of the genre, when battles play themselves out for way too long. As you explore waypoints and fight, you'll be picking up cargo left by dead pirates or come across a minefield, which if you shoot all the mines, you get money. Money and cargo can be used at trading posts to buy upgrades for your ship, like better propulsion, lasers, shields, and more. You'll also come across artifacts, which have special abilities like opening up warp gates and other functions, and they'll also aid you big time in making your way back home eventually. The game successfully manages to combine my three favorite space games into one neat package: Elite, Space Rogue, and Wing Commander. It's got the grand, although much more focused exploration and trading of Elite, the wonderful 3D graphics, presentation, and story aspect of Space Rogue, and the fast-paced battle stylings of Wing Commander. The best feature though is the password system. If you die, you'll get a code to start your new game, and all your money and artifacts will be carried over. In that sense, you never feel like you just wasted an hour of your life, and the nature of continuing to build up your ship is enforced and is a wonderful addition. The game is also free and is PAL compatible, although it supposedly also runs on NTSC at a slightly faster rate. This is a very impressive game, and it's nice to see someone do a genre like this on the C64, as most new games are usually of the arcade style variety. If you like the classic games I mentioned earlier, then this should be your cup of tea. Runn and Gunn was released at the beginning of 2021 by Below the Tower on the Commodore 64. It's another in a long line of excellent new C64 games to grace the good old Commodore in the last decade. The game is an action platform puzzle game that takes all those elements and successfully combines them for a damn good time. I got to speak with programmer and designer of the game, Carlton Handley.
Hi, I'm Carlton Handley. I've been a software developer for over 30 years. I started off coding for the 64 and have recently been bitten by the Commodore bug again. Coded a few modern games for our favourite 8-bit computer, including Millie and Molly and Good Picks.
And asked him if there was any particular older game that inspired Runn and Gunn.
The main inspiration came from some mock-up graphics Sal sent me while we were completing Millie and Molly. He wanted to know whether I'd be interested in developing something off the back of them. They look great, so I was definitely in. I don't think there's any one game which is influenced the direction the game has gone though, just stuff I've played in the past. The Mario is probably the main inspiration, but there's also bits of Metroid, Metal Slug, and Contra.
The story goes the two main characters, Runn and Gunn, get fused together in a military experiment gone awry. Now, as a player, you can switch between them on the fly, each with their own strengths and weaknesses, as you try to stop an alien threat on the planet Bantaya. Switching between these characters is key to success. Runn is fast and can double jump, but has a limited weapon range, and Gunn is slower with no double jump, but his gun's more powerful and shoots further. It's a mechanic used to great effect in Carlton's previous game, Millie and Molly, although in a different gameplay style. I asked Carlton if the two main character switch mechanic is something he loves seeing in games, as I feel it definitely makes gameplay more interesting.
It's just a happy coincidence that there are two characters in both of the games. Saul had originally provided the second character as someone for the player to escort, and it was never our intention for them to be controlled. It's eventually transformed into the switch mechanic, which I think is both more interesting and was actually easier to program.
The game requires fast reflexes and nerves of steel if you want to make it all the way. Dying puts you close to where your death point was, and you also get a bunch of continues, so even though it is tough, it's generous without making you suffer. Knowing who to use when is the biggest key to getting far. I asked Carlton how he came to collaborate with Sol Cross, who does the graphics and music on this game.
I'd already worked with Saul on Millie and Molly. That came about after I posted on Lemon asking for people to work on the new 64 game, so I responded and we went from there. Kinda switched roles for Runn and Gunn when he sent me that map and he needed a programmer who ended up working together again.
As you can see, the graphics are really good, giving a cool NES style platformer look that looks pretty unique on the C64. The music is also another winner, with Sol providing some pumping tunes on this one, sounding a lot like his soundtrack for Alien 8, but but that's a good thing. Once you start figuring out each section, the game becomes easier and easier, and veterans may find it a little short overall, although I enjoyed my time with it a lot. I asked Carlton if there are any plans to add maybe new levels or scenarios to the game later.
The plan was always to release a slightly smaller game as one mission and part of a planned trilogy, but I don't think I've made this clear. I still think there's a decent amount of content, even in this one mission, that I didn't want to spend a lot of time coding something that people may not like, and the sooner people played it and fed back, the better. This feedback can then be used to help improve the game going forward, and it's already helping me in the design of Mission 2. And finally, I hope that each mission would sell enough to fund development for the next one. It takes a lot of time to develop and produce something like Runn and Gunn, and I'm currently working full time on it. So as you can probably guess, support from the 64 community is essential. It's something that has been excellent, and I thank everyone that has taken interest.
The gameplay works well. There's a lot of platforming and shooting with quick reflexes required in the later areas. It reminded me a little bit of Super Meat Boy, but nowhere near as annoying. You can see Carlton's skills as a level designer, as each section is very cleverly put together and work well as a whole. Another feature I like is the controls are changeable. I didn't really like the standard setup and changed it to the up is jump and fire is fire method. Of course, this is just my personal preference, but definitely try it out first to see what works for you. And the game also features full keyboard controls and is NTSC and PAL compatible. I asked Carlton one last question, that being if he has any plans for his next game yet.
Saul and I are planning on completing missions 2 and 3 over the next couple of months. I'd then really like to do something like the Game Boy Zelda game Link's Awakening. Obviously this is a huge undertaking, but Saul already has some graphics he's mocked up, and he's thinking of something similar.
And that's Runn and Gunn, a fast-paced shooting puzzle platform game that I thoroughly enjoyed. Check the video description for a link to purchase the game, and happy platforming.
Number 3.
Soul Force was released by Protovision on the last day of 2020. It's the third game in a trilogy of shoot-'em-ups that programmer Sarah Jane Avery has delivered to the C64 in the last 2 years. I like her other 2 entries, which were vertically scrolling affairs. This is a horizontal entry with enough blasting action to make Manfred Trends blush. The story of the game is your part of the galaxy is getting invaded by a biomechanical invasion force, and it's up to you and the Soul Force space fighter to destroy the threat once and for all. Just like Sarah's other 2 brilliant shooters, this C64 gem is loaded with modern gaming features, which feels like a nice fit on the C64. We got plenty of options like 4 different difficulty settings, a password system to access levels that you've completed, and a built-in save game system, an autofire option, and the game works on NTSC and PAL systems. But my favorite of all the options is being able to listen to any of the game's music tracks, which is a cool console-style feature. Now onto the game itself, which includes 20 massive stages jam-packed with space, underwater, forests and alien bases, and tons of crazy bosses and mid-bosses to defeat. The levels are jam-packed with parallax scrolling, and the stages get more and more crazy the further you go. I love the inclusion of the intermission screens between levels. It adds a lot of atmosphere, and the story elements between you and the main commander. It's this kind of fun stuff that makes this game stand above the rest. And what's a shooter like this without some great weapons? There are 4 types of pickups, and you can upgrade those to make them way more powerful. Lasers, triple shots, as well as collect bombs to blow up everything on screen. Also like Sarah's excellent recent Zeta Wing game, if you die you only lose 1 level of your weapon power, so none of that annoying you lose everything effect that so many of these games on the C64 employed. You can also pick up a shield that can take a good number of hits, and this makes the game way more accessible to people that are not skilled in this genre. I had an absolute blast playing this game. I feel it just gets better and better the further you get. The later levels literally throw everything at you, and it's a real rush and has a classic feel of a really good retro arcade game. The graphics are very good, the parallax scrolling on some of the stages are just excellent, and the sheer variety of enemies and bosses is absolutely crazy. I love the small graphical touches like the jellyfish that's split into 2 smaller versions when shot, or the massive missiles that when hit drop to the surface and explode. The music is also fantastic. The amount of tracks packed in here is amazing. The best part is the overall Soul Force theme is carried over into a lot of the tracks, which makes it feel like a really good classic movie soundtrack, which ties all the music together. And I really love all those fast-paced boss tracks. There's some real toe tappers in there. The game is available in both physical cartridge version and digital form. And if you got a digital copy and want to pimp it out, check out the Cracking Group Access's new tool to convert your version into a crazy trained version, with every cheat imaginable to help you if you're still finding the game too hard. I'll leave a link in the description to the Protovision Protovision website and this tool. This game is a brilliant shoot 'em up, jam-packed with content, and is truly a huge game with some of the best vertical scrolling action the C64 has to offer, and stands tall with Sera's Neutron and Zeta Wing as another classic addition to the C64's shoot 'em up library.
We interrupt our program to bring you this important message.
Soulless 2: The Armor of Gods was released in August 2021 on the Commodore 64 by Cytronic Software. It is a sequel to Soulless, originally released in 2012, and that game also recently received a special edition version, which is totally worth checking out. Soulless 2 picks up story-wise as you, King Ryzak, sets out to find the legendary Armor of the Gods, which gives you the ability to fly and use the Weapon of the Sun. He sets out to find it before it falls into the hands of the demented wizard Kalen. I was lucky enough to interview Trevor Story from Icon 64, who did the art and game concept for Soulless 2. My first question was pretty broad, with the original Soulless coming out almost a decade ago now. How much does he think the C64 retro scene has changed in that time? And Trevor said, there are definitely more development teams and a lot more publishers of 8-bit C64 stuff now. We also have a few dedicated C64 retro magazines with Fusion, Free 64, Zap 64, Italian Zap, Reset 64, just to name a few. Also, with the release of the C64 and the C64 Mini, a lot more people have returned to the C64, so the scene has grown quite a lot, which is great for us all. The game, like Sacred Armor of Anteriad, the inspiration for this game is a combination of exploration, puzzle solving, and a whole lot of action, and combines them excellently for its 4 massive levels. You start off with nothing and have to find a gun for defense, and once you gain the armor, you need to upgrade the suit with guns, and you also now gain the ability to fly and jump in and out of the suit to solve various puzzles and destroy enemies. My second question for Trevor was if he was a fan of the original Anteriad back in the day, and he said, Anteriad was a firm favorite for me and my mates when it came out. The artwork by Dan Malone was killer, and the awesome title music by Richard Joseph brings back great memories. It was fantastic, if short release. Each of the levels you go through has their own look and style, and also focus on a different part of the gameplay element. Level 1 is all about solving puzzles. Level 2 is exploration and discovery of the suit. Level 3 is all about big enemies to fight, etc, etc. It's done really well, and even though you're doing a bit of everything in all the levels, they still have their own identity. Gameplay is a great mix. Simple puzzle solving like matching colors, with statues to open paths to get keys. Action is really fun and fast, whether it's with your gun or with the suit weapon. It's very satisfying blowing away everything, and the exploration element is great. The game does come with a map if you're easily lost, but I found I didn't really need it as the levels tended to be pretty logically set out. I also asked Trevor, with the size of the game being pretty large, I asked him how long the team had been working on this game for, and he said Jorg originally wanted to do a Metroidvania style game, so I designed Hyperium, which was pretty large. Sadly, this turned into a real slog and slowly we lost interest in the project, but I really wanted to do something along the lines, so I simplified the design and brought it back to flip screen. Then it turned into Soulless 2, and the idea to include the armor came about. We started in 2015 and finished in 2021, with a lot of gaps in development while we did other stuff. We still managed to cram a lot into the game, and it only just fit on one side of a disc. There are also plenty of secret rooms to discover that have enemies to kill who drop crowns. These crowns give you extra lives and are well worth seeking out. The Icon 64 team really delivered on this one yet again, with Jorg Rottensteiner on programming, Trevor on art and concept, and Soulcross on background music and sound effects. My final question I asked Trevor was how difficult was it setting up the level design, as you had to get the combination of flying and walking right since most levels incorporate them. And he said, I really wanted each level to feel a bit different from the last. So the first level was designed as an on-foot level where you gain access to a weapon. The second level would be where you find the armor and can fly around and land. Third would have an interactive background pieces, which acted as enemies, and the fourth would have lots of mini-bosses to fight. Final boss was made a separate load, so it'd make it a more interesting battle with a nice bitmap background. The room design changed as we tested, so you could mostly get around on foot. The only thing we had to really think about was the amount of sprites on screen, as you could exit your armor suit, so we had to come up with the ways to get around the sprite limit. We also added a few rooms in the second, third and fourth levels that would randomize on each play. We had to lose the idea of saving any time, as too much info needed to be saved, so we went with a save on level completion instead. There's a lot of game to like here. The 4 levels are big and should offer plenty of challenge to keep you going for quite a while. The graphics are a great combination of high-res background and some superbly animated C64 sprite work, and the look of each level is very different from the last. My only slight niggle is the music seems a little bit too sedate for this kind of adventure. Soul's tracks are good, but not very memorable, and there's not a single tune that I was humming after I turned off my C64. Still, they are pretty atmospheric, and I really did like the sound effects, which complemented the action really well. This game is another gem in the Icon 64's crown, and the game is both NTSC and PAL compatible, and works on everything from real hardware, VICE, and the C64 Mini and Maxi. It's not only an excellent homage to that Palace software classic, but takes all its shortcomings and makes a truly grand, fun adventure game that any C64 owner should be happy with. And let's just stop here for a second before we look at the number 1 game. Let's look at a few honorable mentions. These games just missed the top spot, but are still well worth checking out. So there were a lot of great C64 games that didn't make this list, but these are just a few I played this year and really enjoyed as well. First up is Nixy the Glade sprite, which is a pretty fun platform action adventure game with a really unique graphic style and a cool sense of exploration. It's a bit short but totally worth playing. Next is Ninja Carnage, a strange visual novel trial and error type game, where you play a wisecracking ninja sent on a mission to kill a dude. The gameplay and crude dialogue is definitely not going to be for everybody, but if you want to try something completely different on the C64, then this is it. And of course it has ninjas. Plekthora was another game by Dr. Mortal Wombat of Gates of the Ancient. It's a really well made graphically and sound-wise shoot 'em up. I really enjoyed the simplicity of this one, and it's totally worth giving a go. Night Night is a cool little conversion of an MSX game to the C64. It's a simple arcade romp that's worth a look if you love early 80s style arcade games. The Lost Realm of Murkasada Episode 1 is a precursor, as far as I know, to an upcoming roguelike RPG. This is kind of a small little adventure to give you a taste of what's to come. It's a unique mixture of strategy and RPG mechanics and makes me really interested in the future product. And there were also a bunch of cool conversions of classic arcade and Atari 2600 games to the C64 by Outrage this year. Too many to go through, with the highlights for me being Thunderground, a conversion of Atari 2600 game, and the arcade double dose of Galaga and Galaxian. So check out Olasoft's itch page for all the games. And there were obviously much more, but these are just the ones that I found particularly fun. And now on to our number 1 game.
And number 1 is
Briley Witch Chronicles was released in the last quarter of 2021 by Witchsoft on the Commodore 64. This game is a full-on traditional JRPG on the C64, programmed, written and designed by Sarah Jane Avery of Soulforce fame, which we just looked at earlier. It's a big fun adventure, clocking in at between 15 and 30 hours depending on your skill level, so there's plenty of bang for your buck here. The game itself is based on Sarah's own Briley Witch Chronicles book series, and if you like old school traditional 80s style JRPGs like the original Final Fantasy and Dragon Quest, then this game is going to be right up your alley. The story involves Briley, a girl from Earth who gets sucked into another world of witches and magic. There she has to adapt quickly and learn the witching ways to basically survive and solve the mystery of the dark spirit who resides in the forest. This game covers the first 4 books in Sarah's series, with her saying herself, yes, there will be a Briley 2 and a Briley 3, thinking of making an Amiga versions of the whole series Soulless too. So the series is probably going to see the entire book series in game form, which is quite amazing. The game itself is pure quality from top to bottom. Gameplay is slow but rewarding, with lots of turn-based combat and chatting with NPCs, and obviously completing quests. The menus are layered with details, from equipping items, mixing ingredients to make potions, exploring vast dungeons in towns. The best part of Briley for me is the writing though, and how it actually manages to make every character unique and memorable, which is quite a feat for 8-bit gaming. If you're not good at RPGs, then fear not as well, as it has the option to play in normal or easy mode if you just want to follow the story and enjoy the overall experience. Music is also quite good. I did notice that some of the tracks are almost slowed down versions of some of the music from Soul Force, or at least that's what it sounds like to me. Still, awesome stuff nevertheless. I also love the easy to use save feature and the fact that you can actually play this keyboard style, which for me makes this game's pace and menu so much quicker and easier to navigate, and I'd highly recommend this over the joystick controls. It also features an excellent PDF manual which is loaded with information, and I'd definitely recommend you read this before starting up the game. It's both NTSC and PAL compatible and works on the Mini and Maxi, but unfortunately it doesn't look like the physical version is happening anymore, which Sarah said on her Twitter. That may change though, considering this quote of hers. Briley Chronicles is close to hitting 750 sales. I don't think that's too bad for a C64 game that's been out for a month. Looks like I'll have to make that sequel. This game is just plain excellent. Great varied graphics, nice soundtrack, deep gameplay, great writing, and solid game mechanics across the board. Just make it my personal favorite C64 game of 2021. Check it out. I'm sure you won't be disappointed. And that's it for another excellent year for Commodore 64 games. I can't believe this type of quality is still being made. It's brilliant. Congratulations for everybody in the top 10. Everybody did an excellent job. Even the honorable mentions, please check out all those games as well. As far as the number 1 spot goes, if I'd made this video on any other day, any of the top 3 the games there could have been number 1. It's just how I felt at the time. But what's really important is what your number 1 is. That's all that really matters. But I hope you did manage to find maybe a few games that you might have missed. And there'll be a link in the description where you can find and download all these games. Thanks for joining me, Bastish B at 64K. I hope you had a good time. And if you can please like and subscribe, that'll be greatly appreciated. And I'll see you next time. Cheers.